So something Americans need to understand is the reason that everybody has always been out to go after America is because they know who you are. Even though you may not know who you are, they do. And how do they know? At least if you saw my last video, the 10 kingdoms in prophecy. That Roman Empire, the Vatican, told these other kingdoms. Because that Vatican knew. They knew. They knew. They knew all those Protestants coming here. They knew. It only takes common sense to figure out that John's book, when he wrote Revelations, that clearly Philadelphia meant here. That's not hard to put together because, and everybody, even stupid historians, okay, because they don't know the Holy Spirit, but say that, no, that letter was to the church in Asia Minor. No, it doesn't line up. It doesn't. But it absolutely lines up with America, most especially right now, because in that book, in that letter to Church of Philadelphia, it says, hold fast to what you have. Do not let them take your crown. Hold fast is key. Hold fast is in the Bible so much, first of all, but it's particularly in that letter. And out of those 7 letters, that's the letter you want to get from God, saying he's happy with you, saying to hold fast to what you have. Do not let them take your crown. Because God will make you the pillar. He will put the pillar here. Hold fast is the McLeod clan's family motto. Donald Trump is a McLeod. And then there's just a whole bunch of other obvious. I already broke down that whole letter and proved how every bit of it. So, but even though Americans weren't told that, there were people, the Protestants that came here in the 1700s, they knew it. And and Rome knew it. Rome knew that it didn't line up with that church in Asia Minor. You think they weren't constantly trying to figure out where's God? Because they knew they weren't serving God. They knew it. They knew who they were. I mean, okay. I mean, what does Jesus say the beast will do? He will deceive the whole world. They have deceived the whole world and made them think that they're about Christ, and they're not. And yet, they've influenced every country. So if you think that that enemy to Christ, that same enemy back from when Christ walked the earth, just different faces now, wasn't tearing apart through Revelations, trying to think, how can we stop this? How can we fight it? Think again. They knew that that letter to the Church of Philadelphia did not line up in Asia Minor. Even though at the time, John likely thought that's who it was for because there was a Philadelphia, I think it's Turkey, in Asia Minor. But it doesn't line up for there. It doesn't, because it won't fall. It's a pillar that is unmovable. Unmovable. It most certainly won't be controlled by the Roman Empire. So that Roman Empire that became, oh, we're about Christ, told all these kingdoms. It did. And so it told those kings, you know, we have to do something. Because what's the first thing to happen if you think America might be the nation that God will place his pillar in? Well, you'd get jealous, right? You would. You'd have, your ego would kick in, most especially if they're the Vatican. Just look at how they dress. So the ego will kick in, and we have to do something. So that's the reason there's been like just nothing but, even though they couldn't, none of them have been able to take us militarily or any of that. That being all thanks to God, by the way. That's another reason you should every day thank God. The reason they've always wanted to attack everything about us down to we're the most racist country, we're the most, all of these horrible things is because they know who you are. They just didn't want you to know who you were, America. And it probably worked out good that way because, had you known, everybody be all in their ego about it, like, oh, we're so important, But most Americans, I know there's Americans like that, like these pastors, like my video about Mark Driscoll, they're suppressing. So see, all of the people, even if it's AI setting up the algorithms, God will hold the people at TikTok responsible. God will hold the people at all social media. That's why I've said for 5 years, this isn't that if you have any sense at all to you, you will not play these games. Because you are under a microscope, not by the surveillance of Peter Thiel in Silicon Valley. They're all under a microscope. And if they had any smarts at all, they would stop social media from silencing people like me when I'm standing up speaking about Christ and calling Mark Driscoll out. Because you want to know who the Charlie Kirks and Mark Driscoll and all of these Christian nationalists are? They are the Roman Empire. They don't want God to rule. They don't. They do not. They are absolutely in defiance of God. They are absolutely doing everything to deceive people because their only hope at this point is to silence real truthers and try to keep the people deceived. Because how have they been winning the game? How have they been continuing the game to go on and on? Is making the people become deceived, following the Candace Owens stupid narrative of Charlie Kirk when he wasn't up to any good, okay? That's what they're trying to do. So of course they silence me. The problem they're all gonna have is God's done with the game. So all of them, I said they've been under review. So every time they continue to silence real people that aren't breaking any of their guidelines, but are speaking the truth, it's just a mark against them. But of course they would silence me. Of course they would. They wouldn't want to, they need Americans to continue to be deceived, whether it's by the mainstream media or Turning Point or Mark Driscoll or all of these people that have no good intentions for you. But they will all, the stupidity of them is like great. But I think God already handed many of them over to their delusions. So at this point, there's people that are out to get America. They have been. We didn't know how bad it was. They didn't just come in through Joe Biden. A mass amount did. The worst ones came in under Joe Biden for sure. But they were coming even before that in other ways, because we've had presidents that were up to no good. Because there's people that do not want God to rule. That Vatican knows. They knew what America was. They knew when all those Protestants came here, and then when one of the first cities named was Philadelphia, they knew. And William Penn named it that because of that church in Asia Minor. Not only that, out of the 7 letters in the book of Revelation, 5 of them, even though the one to Philadelphia is the best, it's like you've been crowned already, don't lose your crown. There's 5 that are decent, like that God's not given up on. 2 of the churches, he's like, you're done. There's not much. I've almost taken your lamp. I've almost taken your light away. So when he says I've almost taken your lamp out, it means the Holy Spirit out of that country. The churches are nations. Even though every church in the world has carried on that God was talking about some specific building. No, because to God, the church was a nation of people. It was never a structure. Vatican knows that. They know they don't serve God. They'll continue to say that they do, which is why God will have to deal with that beast. But what they've always been deceiving Americans to believe is that you're the worst when really you're not.